Should I start again? Okay.
That's your last name.
Yeah. So, okay. My name's Jackie King. I run King's Automotive in Bloomingdale, and we work on Nissans and BMWs. We're located in Bloomingdale, New Jersey, and yeah. So originally I got into cars because my dad was a mechanic. So growing up, I was always around like automotive stuff. But because of that, like it made me not want to get into cars because my family were from Taiwan. We immigrated here, so we didn't have a lot coming to America. So growing up, I always saw my dad coming home late, working hard. He was a mobile mechanic, so he didn't even have a shop. He would go and fix people's like cars in their driveways, at their homes, and he would do like big stuff for driveway type jobs. You know, he'd be doing like people's timing belts and stuff like that. Didn't really do crazy stuff like engine like swaps and whatnot, but it was very hard work nonetheless. Sometimes like I didn't know when he would be coming home. If he told me he'd be coming home at like 4 and it was like 8, like as a 8-year-old, I would like freak out because I didn't know if like a jack like collapsed on my dad and like I had no way of really reaching out to him. So I just trusted that he would have to come home. So because of that, I didn't really want to get into cars, and because growing up like very poor and as immigrants, I didn't want to get into cars because like everyone always respects like white collar workers in terms of like their title and their salary. So, you know, traditional Asian stereotype led me to want to become like either like a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or whatever. So that's kind of like what I ended up doing. But as I went to a vocational high school that offered healthcare sciences as like a major. And I even went on to go to college for a bio degree, which I graduated with. But for some reason, when like I was in high school, back when Tumblr was still like a thing, I saw a lot of 240s being posted, and for some reason I just really liked the way that the cars looked. Like that had become my dream car for a while. And then I used to work at Advanced Auto Parts, just, you know, ringing people up, retailing parts, and just, I don't know, just helping people out. And I had a friend there named Mark, and one day I saw a 240 for sale in Ohio for like $7,500. And I think at the time I was like 18 or 19, and $7,500 was like the most amount of money that I had ever actually materialized in my head. But for some reason, like I was able to get it to work, and the very next day, my friend Mark and I called out of work, and we rented a Penske truck and drove all the way to Ohio with a trailer and bought this 240, brought it back. And then once I brought it back, my dad and I, we just went around refreshing the entire car, doing like maintenance and whatever. We didn't do any crazy builds or anything like that. It's just like the stock, bone stock like 240, very slow car, but you know, I loved it. And after we built it up and like basically got it like well sorted, I couldn't stop thinking about cars. And this was like maybe junior year in college at this point in time. And after that, I just couldn't like focus in college. I was taking like an intros to statistics class, which is like one of the easiest classes ever. And couldn't like find myself to study for it. I didn't end up failing it or anything. Like I still made good grades, but it was just so hard. Like the first like couple years of college was so easy because like I could focus, but after that 240 came into my life, I just couldn't focus anymore. So, you know, I went on to graduate from like Rutgers with a bio degree, but immediately after I got a job at like Nielsen Dodge in East Hanover, like as like a lube tech. So I was just doing like oil changes and whatnot. And at that point, I had already been so deep into 240s, and I started working on like 300 ZXs that I was already doing like engine swaps, like big things. So it kind of bothered me that Nielsen Dodge was just like having me do oil changes, tire rotations and whatnot. So I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. So I went on Craigslist. I found a little garage in West Milford, which is like further up north than where we are. And it was a lot of money at the time. It was like literally just a garage with like it must have been like 10-foot ceilings, like really, really low. Like you couldn't do anything in there. It was basically someone's garage. And it was like $500 a month. But that was what I wanted to do. So I rented out, and you know, I was just doing jobs, and I was still taking on jobs with my dad because he still had his mobile mechanic stuff going on. So we started bringing cars over there, but it felt like I was drowning because like We weren't charging people that much. It was a lot to go and pick up people's cars and bring it all the way up to West Milford, which is really far from like where we lived. So it wasn't working out. And then one day, like I would take this road home every day from West Milford, and I just kept passing by this place. And I never really thought anything of it. I saw that it was vacant for the most part, and people just parked like, there was like a company here that just parked ambulances here for some reason. And then when this place came up for like rent, my friend texted me. He was like, "Yo, like you should check this place out. It's like 15 minutes closer to your home. It's a much bigger spot. It's like a legitimate like repair shop type deal, and obviously has lifts and a huge parking spot." Because like back at the garage in West Milford, there was like nothing. Like the landlord was like, "Dude, like I'll give you like one parking spot," and then like every other parking spot was like $50 more a month. And like his land was huge, so it really didn't matter. But he just I guess didn't want to play ball. So this just made a lot more sense, and that's how I ended up over here. And that's how I ended up being a mechanic, I guess. And this became like my career. So I started this in November 2nd, 2017. So, you know, shortly it's going to be 4 years. But I think prior to this, I was working on cars for maybe 3 years, just running around my dad. Didn't really get like crazy amounts of experience because, like I said, we would going to people's houses and stuff. So we were mostly doing like easy stuff like brakes, suspension, or whatever. I don't even think we ever did a clutch for people because like you can't really be dropping your transmissions in people's driveways, like making a mess everywhere. So I would say like 7 years in total. So yeah, almost hopefully 10 years soon. So the feelings from buying that 240 and eventually like hopping into like 300 ZXs, I was like all about like JDM cars. I was like, I want an S15 one day. I want a GTR, like biggest GTR fanboy for a long time. I mean, I feel like that's how most people start out. So I was very interested in it, and maybe like first like year or two, I was here like every day to like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., just like trying to like do as much as I can because I just genuinely loved it. And I think I ended up burning out, but realistically what keeps me interested in it nowadays is like working on new platforms or just buying like new cars for myself. Like we started off as like a Nissan shop, so we were like heavy into Zs. Like a lot of people in this area will bring their 300 ZXs here, you know, then we started doing 350s and 370s, you know, G37s, G35s, like same car, same platforms. And it got to a point where like we had just seen them so many times that like something that's supposed to take us like 8 hours to do on one of those cars ends up taking us like 2, because like we just do them like all the time. So at that point, like it started kind of becoming like, okay, like we've already learned, I wouldn't say everything because you never can really know everything about a car. There's still days where like a Z or a Nissan will just like totally like, I'll spend like a whole week on it and make like no progress because it would just be that hard. But it got to a point where like everything just felt like the same. It felt monotonous. So I started branching out into like other cars, and for some reason I picked BMWs. It just seemed like every time I worked on them, I was having like a good time. It feels like the way they're put together is very intuitive, and they just were fun to work on. They were fun to drive. I think they're beautiful cars. There's a very good like enthusiast following, and that's what kind of keeps me going. Like, and at this point in time, like we've shifted from like Nissans to like BMWs. And I don't know if we'll shift to something else afterwards, but that's kind of what keeps me going. Just like the feeling of progress, growing and learning. Like if there's a car that like we've worked on before, I'm not really interested in it. I'll try to like either have my partner Ralphie work on it or have my dad work on it. But if it's like a new car that like we've never fixed, I'll try to do it because like I want to learn what's involved in that job, like how that car comes together and how it comes like apart. So I would say some of the best days I've had at the shop is when like I learn something new, when I like troubleshoot something that's like very hard and I get to learn like, oh, that's exactly how this whole entire system works. So that's what kind of keeps me interested. If it's monotonous every day, we're doing like timing belts on a 300ZX every day, it's kind of like, okay, that's cool, but we've already done them like 1,000 times type deal, you know? So at that point, it's just kind of like going through the motions, and you can't really have a lot of fun in that, you know? What really drew me to BMWs? Well, at first I thought later, at first when I was like heavy into Nissans, I was kind of like, yeah, like I don't really like BMWs. Like everyone who like has one probably thinks like they're so cool or this and that. And I just never imagined being like drawn to them myself. But really it was just like, I think it was like a chance thing. Like it just happened to be that we got a good amount of people with like BMWs in here, and like they were like, you know, like nothing crazy. They weren't like all M3s or anything like that. It was just like 328s, 325s, just 3 Series, like, you know, very like entry level BMW type deal. So, and every time we worked on them, it was just fun. Like it honestly was just fun. Like coming from like the JDM like scene, like everything has like rust on it. Like, you know, you could spend like 8 hours on a single bolt. You know, you could have your whole day ruined because of one bolt. Like something that else would be like a 1 hour job turns into a whole day ordeal. Whereas like on BMWs, like yeah, they definitely do rust too, but I just feel like the quality of stuff that they use was better. So I just ended up being drawn to them because every time I worked on one, it was easy and like everything came apart. Like, from like an engineering and like design aspect, like they were good. Like obviously they make everything out of plastic, so you'll have like leaks all the time and like their gaskets always leak all the time. But aside from that, like they've never been hard to work on. They've never been really that hard to diagnose, and there's so much information on them out there. And just like I said earlier, from an enthusiast perspective, like they're great cars. Like my very first sports car was a 240, and like they're known for good handling, drifting and whatnot. And you know, my first like E36 M3 that I drove in, I was like, that thing's not even lower. Like there's nothing done to it. It was like bone stock, and it handles better than the 240, which was like lower. It had like bracings and this and that, like strut bars, whatever, like under chassis bracing. You know, the 240 felt good, but like the bone stock E36, I felt like it could run laps around like 240. They're just like well built. Like they're not very like fast off the line, like, and they weren't designed to be. You know, they're all top end. So when you're running around like corners or laps, like it feels like a really well designed car. Like out of a corner, like it can accelerate. You know, you're not taking anyone off the line, but they're just great from like how they feel, like steering wise, handling wise, and power wise. It's like they hit the nail like right on the head, you know. So that's what like kind of drew me to them. As far as like where they stand in like motorsport, I don't really know. I can't really give you a straight up answer on that because like I don't necessarily take my cars to the track. I don't really compete against other people, but just like out of all the cars that I've driven, they definitely feel like the most solid. Like every time I've taken like someone in like my E92, everyone's always like, wow, this car's like so smooth and it feels great, sounds great. Like just the pure, like, I guess the ultimate driving machine like slogan that they love to use, you know, I feel like it sort of holds up to that. Like obviously they have like annoying things, like the E9X generation, like the cup holders are so bad. Like you hit a bump, like you're spilling your drink all the time. So, you know, there's definitely weird things that definitely make them not the ultimate driving machine. But as far as like an enthusiast feel, like they feel amazing. Like everything about them is just like well balanced. So, and then as far as where I think they will go, I don't really know because I haven't driven an F80 or a G80 yet. I heard they handle like better than the E92, which doesn't really make sense to me because they're 4-door. But you know, I think they can only really get better. You know, I hope one day like I'll get to drive them. But I think where they're heading is good. I don't know with the advent of like EVs, like how that's really going to change the world of motorsports. So I can't really say for that, but all I know is that as far as the F80 and G80 goes, like I love everything about them. Like I love how they look. Like from what I hear about their performance, I think they're great. Like it's awesome that they're gonna have an all-wheel drive variant of a G80 that's like never been done on the M3. So I think it's gonna be cool that they can have it be like rear-wheel drive on the fly. Like granted, that's probably more things to break having like a rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system, but I think they're going the right step in terms of motorsports. So. It's not for like any crazy reason. I think it's just because like the 3 Series is like the flagship. Like they're the most common ones out there. Like obviously in the E36, like yeah, you had the E39 M5 and you had some other M cars, but I felt like what was attainable for me at the time was the E36 M3, and like obviously like for performance, like I wanted a two-door, and I think I was just drawn to them based on the sheer quantity. Like you never, like obviously everyone loves the M5. The M4 is new, so I can't really have gone into that based off of like the timing that I got into cars. So just seeing like M3s everywhere and them being the most common ones, I bought an E36 M3, and I wasn't even looking for an E46. I was kind of just like, honestly, I really like the E36 M3. It's low mileage, it's super clean. It was like two owners. So I actually bought it from like an investment aspect. So I was like, yo, like these cars are gonna go up. So I kind of just bought it to sit on it. And then like a couple months went by, and then an E46 M3 came up for sale near me, and it was from someone that I had known. And based off of what I knew on the market, I was like, wow, like that's a good price. It's, you know, it's a 2004, so supposedly some issues they had regarding like the subframe, like ripping out the floor pan, was addressed in late '04. And it was like a coupe, because a lot of E46s are convertible, and like I just didn't want to deal with like convertibles because they leak. So it just seemed right based off the mileage, price, and like the condition and like, I guess, state of the car. So I bought that, and then I wasn't even looking for the E92 either. I was just on Facebook Marketplace one day, and it was like the spec that I wanted. It was like 2013, so last year. It was also black. It had the competition package, so it has it had all the other options, like basically whoever optioned that car out literally just like checked the box up on like everything. Like it has like carbon fiber front splitters, the carbon like the trunk spoiler, the carbon roof, the side mirror caps, has like individual sound and just like everything. So that turned up, and I was like, I have to go and get this. It was black, it was manual, because like all the E92 M3s that I was seeing was like DCT, and like obviously the DCT is great if you're running around the track, but as far as like me, who mostly just enjoys it like around town or on the highway, like I really liked having the driving feel of it, you know? So it being a manual was like the like nail in the coffin. So like I was like, I have to go and get this, and that's kind of like how I ended up with the 3 M3s. And then after that, I guess I'm just like locked in. Like I'm probably gonna have to get an F82, like an M4, because it's two-door. But since it's like not an M3, it kind of makes me feel weird. But then the F80 would be four-door, and they're all two-door. So like I'm kind of like in the middle of a crisis right now. Like I don't know what exactly I'm gonna get. But it kind of turned from like just buying E36 because I just liked it. It was clean. Like I liked the car for what it was. And it kind of turned into like an obsession that just kept rolling. So now that I feel like I have the 3, like I can't stop. Like I have to get like the E30 M3 like one day, because they're like $1 million right now. And then maybe like an F80 or F82 another day. And then once the G80s come out with like the facelift, I get to see the end of their life cycle, maybe I'll see if I can get one of those at some point in time. So that's how I ended up with the 3 M3s.
Which one of the M3s is your favorite?
That's a really hard one. That's a really hard question, because each of the M3s offer something that I like more than the other ones. Like, we'll start with the E36. Like, it's got Vaders, it's black on black. The other two have like gray interior, which like wasn't like, I almost didn't buy the E46 because I saw it had the dove gray interior, and I was like really disappointed, because for some reason I just assumed like everyone would have a black interior, because like I don't know why someone would get a gray interior. So when I saw E46 for sale and I saw that it had gray interior, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like my biggest hang up. And then when I went to see the E92, it had the two-tone, like it was a premium option. So someone paid more to have like a two-tone black and gray, which I don't think looks that good. I mean, some days I like it, some days I don't. But what I like the most about the E36 is the interior. Like it's full black on black. The Vaders are like in mint condition. Obviously it has like classic like E36 interior failures. Like I think the headliner is starting to sag like just a little. The little like surrounds on the speakers and the door panels are like chipped and breaking. The door panel like leather is like delaminating like from the actual panel itself, which like supposedly they revised in the later model, like later year like door panels. But those are like $500 a piece or something like that. So what I really love about the E36 is like I really love the interior. I like how low key it is. I like um, I like that it still feels pretty light because like when I hop into the E46 and the E92, they feel kind of heavy. Like the E46 has enough power to make it not feel heavy, but with the E92 and like everyone knows this, like they make like no torque. Like under 5,000 RPM, you're really not going anywhere. Like I feel like I could go in that car, like put it in first, let it warm up, put like the sport mode on, just like dump the clutch in first and just launch it, and it'll like barely put me back in my seat. Like I don't know what size tires are on there now, but I'm pretty sure it's stock sizing. Like I can't get that thing to slip unless I'm taking a turn at like 100 miles per hour type deal. Like in a straight line, I'll dump it, it'll hook, like it, no torque. So sometimes like around town it sucks because like I can't get anywhere. I have to like really rev it out. But that's what I really like about the E36. Like it still feels light, it still feels nimble. I think the interior is like beautiful. On the Vaders they have like the M stitching like in the top right corner of it. Like beautiful car. It's simple. Like when I get in the E36 M3, I feel like it won't break. Like I could drive that thing as hard as I wanted to, like, and it won't break. Whereas like on the E46, it's like, dude, you got like bulletproof the vanos, you gotta worry about rod bearings, like, oh, the floor pan's gonna crack if you like launch it too hard and this and that. Like I think the rear springs crack too on the bottom. It's just like, yeah, like the E36, I don't have to worry about that. The E46, I'm kind of like, yo, this car is very cool, but it might blow up on me. Like I have to get AAA on this. So, all right, so as far as the E46 goes, I could have sworn for the longest time I thought the E46 was like the most beautiful M3 like ever. Like, you know, big front fenders, big quarter panels, high revving, like it makes decent power, and just beautiful cars like through and through. Like it has such a presence. So that's kind of like what I like the most about it. Like I love the styling of it. You know, I thought like on the E36 M3, you don't really get a lot of like styling cues that distinguish it from like a normal 3 Series and an M3. And I think that was like everyone's biggest complaint. Like you could get like the M3 door, like the door molding, the decals on the door. And you could get like the M3 like side view mirrors and like just put a couple things on, and then like a normal E36 will look like an E36 M3. So when the E46 came, it was like, dude, you can't bolt on a quarter panel. So like no one can make a replica M3 without like a lot of work. So, you know, the M3 like grill on the side of the fenders on the E46, like just everything was beautiful about that car. What I like the most about it is obviously like its ability to rev. They're high revving motors. They make good power. They don't feel like a slouch down low. A lot of people say E46s are like the worst sounding M3s. I don't know if it's just like how the exhaust is set up on the one that I have, but I really like the way they sound. Like especially when they're revving really fast, it kind of gives, I can't really like explain how it feels. It's just like a really raw feeling type of sound. Like it feels like it's working and it's like working well. I like the E46 the most in terms of its like driving aspect. I feel like out of the 3, it's the best handling one. It's definitely the most like fun to drive because it's just very raw. Like it makes it's a very exciting like feel every time you drive. Like it puts you back in your seat and it puts a smile on your face every single time. It is lower than the other 2 aren't, so that could be why I feel like it handles better. But it's just like a great car from like in terms of styling, power, handling, and I like that it stands out. Like it has a presence. Anytime like I see an E46 M3 like on the road, like I break my neck every time. Like you could just tell like from a mile away that's like an E46 M3. Obviously, like on the E36 M3s, they didn't have like the power button. They just had like the S50 or S52, which made more power than the other E36s. But on the S54s, they had independent throttle bodies. So, you know, they had a power button that like changes all that. And that was great because you had like an option to drive around town like a normal person, or you had like the option to really just rip the car around. So that was pretty cool. And that's pretty much it. The E46 M3 was like a great car, just really problematic. Everyone always talks about the big three. You know, again, like Vanos, rod bearings, the subframe issue. So, but aside from that, I think if you do those three, like they're pretty much bulletproof for the most part. Just timeless cars, like beautiful cars. So.
And then moving on to the last one, the newest one do you have?
So yeah, the E92 I got back in March. Although the E46 is like the most fun to drive, I think the E92 is definitely my favorite because it obviously has like the wider fenders, quarter panel, it has like the big hood hump, the M3 mirrors, so it has like stylistic cues separated from the E9X generation. But they're very low key. I feel like if most people who don't know, who aren't into cars, if like a 328 drove by them, or even a 335 and then an M3 drove right by them, I feel like most people would think that that was like the same car. So I like that they're pretty subtle. For the same reason I like it, I also dislike it. Like they're very subtle, you know. Whereas with the E46, it had the presence. The E92 kind of has a presence, but it's like a if you know kind of thing. It's definitely my favorite to drive because it's very smooth. Like the E46 is raw, and that's why it's so fun to drive. But the E92, like you could do like 120, 140 in it, and there's like barely any wind noise. Like nothing is shaking. Like granted, the E46 does that as well. But the E92 is just like on a whole nother level. Like you don't hear anything. Like the car's just going. Like all you have to do is like worry about like how you're steering and like not crashing into other people. So for that, like the E92 is like by far my favorite to drive. Like it's also my favorite because it's bone stock. Like whereas the E46, if I hit a huge bump, I'll probably rub. You know, that's not anything that's specific to an E46 or E92. That's just like how they're set up for me. On the E92, like I can go over any speed bump. Like I don't really care because like I don't have to. Like it's stock high. I never ever hit anything. I never rub, never scrape, nothing. And it's also my favorite to drive because it's definitely the best sounding one. Like only M3 with V8, you know, it's a fast revving V8. Like a V8 that redlines at like 8,400, it's just like an incredible feeling. Like you just, like anytime you get in the car, like you want to go fast because like you just want to like use all that, like use all the revs. Like it's there for you to use it. So it's got all the creature comforts. It's the newest one. So you know, like the AC blasts the coldest, the heat works the best. It's got the best sound system. Everything is just like a little better on it, and like that's the whole point of it being like the newer M3. But yeah, it's the competition package, so it has the Alcantara steering wheel, which like love and hate. Like you know, if my hands are feeling a little dirty and I touch it, I hate the steering wheel because like I just know I'm messing it up. But like when my hands are clean, which my hands stay dirty most of the time, so I hate it most of the time because I'm a mechanic. But like when my hands are clean, like the Alcantara steering wheel is great. Everything about it, like it's got like the craziest surround system. They got speakers like everywhere, so you don't have to play music loud for it to sound good. And then when you're not listening to music, you could just rev the hell out of the engine and listen to that. It's got like a crazy like traction control system going on there. Like you can feel it correctly. You could do it like you could feel it like figuring things out. Like you could take a turn and like it just goes where you want it to go. All you have to worry about is how fast you're going. That's literally all you have to do. Like it'll turn like a normal driver into like a decent driver. It gives you like a lot of confidence, and obviously that's not a good thing all the time, but that car really makes like driving kind of easy. So it's a great car in terms of like everything. Like one time I did like a Bear Mountain run with like my friend Ralphie, and that thing was just like perfection. Like everything about it, from like how it took turns to like powering out of a turn, it was to the steering feel, everything was like perfect. All I had to focus was on the road ahead of me. Like I had never like really known like what that was. Like obviously everyone always touts the M3 as like, oh, it's a great track car, this and that. But for me, who mostly just, I usually just try to buy like low mileage, like clean condition cars that like I would resell if I have to, but I don't really plan on it. But I never really knew from an enthusiast aspect or like performance aspect like how great they were actually as track cars. I mean, granted, I didn't rip the E36 or E46 around, but if it's anything like the E92, like they're gonna be amazing. Like the E92 was just like literally perfect. Like I was always one of those guys who was like, yeah, like I'm not gonna go to a track. Like I think that's like it's not for me. Like I don't want to do like racing and this and that. I'm just gonna have nice cars. I'm gonna drive them and that's it. And, like, you know, I'll enjoy them. But after that like one Bear Mountain run, I was like, dude, this is actually incredibly fun. Like I am like legitimately like addicted. Like I'm like I want to start buying like track gear, you know, take some classes and just like find out the limits of the car. And I feel like if I was like in another car doing the Bear Mountain run that night, I probably wouldn't feel like this. But the E92 is just like, I feel like perfection for the most part. Like people's complaints are that it's a little heavy, and like, yeah, it definitely feels a little heavy. Some people say it would have made for like a great M5, but I don't know. Like when you're up there in the rev range, like it's perfect. Like the delivery is where you need it. You're not doing 0 to 60 when you're like taking corners, you know, you're already going pretty fast. So the way it accelerates and how all the power is made like top end, it was like pure driving pleasure, man. Like it was crazy. So, but yeah, that's why it's probably my favorite to drive. It's the most smooth. Just everything all around is better in a sense. So it's not as sporty feeling as the E46, but it's definitely like my favorite one to drive. I think one word that I would use to describe the M3 would just be beautiful. Like they're beautiful cars. Like from everything about their presentation to their driving is great. Like whenever like I open the hood of the E92 M3, and like you get that big like MV8 logo on there, like yeah, I guess at some points if I like look at it too hard, it can be kind of cheesy. But like just how everything's presented, it like feels good. I think they're beautiful cars through and through, from like what they use for like their powertrain, their outside styling, like just everything about them. Like I'm not always a huge fan of like, especially like the E36 interior, where like it falls apart. Like it looks great, but like the quality isn't always there. But aside from that, like they're just beautiful cars. Like everything about them. Like I like the way that they look. I can't like even I feel like I'm so biased because I think they're such beautiful cars. Like if you showed me like the ugliest, like if everyone in the world agreed on like this one BMW is literally the ugliest car in the world out of every single brand, I would still look at it and be like, nope, that's like a beautiful car, because like I just think they really are. Like they look good, they're proportioned well. They're just they're smooth. The design of them like flows, and like I could look at them all day. So the one word that I would use to describe like the M3 is that it's just a beautiful car. Like from everything about it, interior, exterior, performance. So that's it.
That's that on that.
That's that.
Oh, give me, you know what? Give me a quick clap.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
It's cool that you can edit it like out like all the like